In an Indian village within the Adilabad forest, a young girl named Malli captivates everyone with her incredible talent. As she sings a beautiful song, she delicately draws on the hands of a European woman. However, the arrival of Scott Buxton and his soldiers alters the atmosphere. Catherine, the woman, excitedly shows her husband the artwork created by Malli and expresses her desire to bring the girl along as her servant. Edward, in turn, offers money to Loki. Misinterpreting the situation, Malli's mother and the woman accept the coins, believing them to be payment for Malli's artwork. Shortly after, it becomes apparent that Catherine's true intention was to purchase Malli, treating the young girl as a commodity. Shocked by this revelation, the woman forcefully pushes Malli into a vehicle, and Loki desperately chases after them. Overwhelmed with desperation to retrieve her daughter, the woman pleads with the English individuals to return Malli. In a tense moment, a soldier approaches, aiming his gun at the native's head but is prevented from pulling the trigger. Scott intervenes, declaring that the bullet is too valuable to be wasted on those people, instructing the soldier to find an alternative way to deal with Loki. The soldier then grabs a piece of wood and strikes the woman on the head, subjecting her to a brutal attack right before her daughter's eyes. On the outskirts of Delhi, a rebellion erupts as the people gather, demanding the release of their leader or threatening to set the entire place ablaze. Amidst the chaos, Raju emerges and breaches the defense line, fearlessly confronting the rebels. With unwavering courage, he single-handedly defeats numerous adversaries, undeterred by their attempts to immobilize him. Even as the rebels unite in a bid to impede his progress, Raju remains steadfast, driven by his mission to capture the individual responsible for hurling a rock at the military base. He valiantly combats the rebels, fending off their efforts to obstruct his advance, until he finally reaches his target. Witnessing the intense battle, Raju's superiors are deeply impressed by his unwavering determination. Despite being at a significant disadvantage, Raju refuses to surrender to his adversaries. Having successfully captured his target, he drags the man into the facility, fulfilling the orders given by his commander. After washing his blood-stained face, Raju returns to his position, instilling fear in the men who were unable to defeat him. However, despite his unwavering dedication, Raju finds himself frustrated by his inability to ascend the ranks and become a special officer. To channel his frustration, he pours his energy into rigorous training, pushing himself to the limit. His determination pays off as he even manages to tear a sandbag apart with the sheer force of his punches. After 6 months, Venkatavadani pays a visit to Edward and shares alarming news. During his visit to Adilabad village, Governor Scott and his wife had taken a young girl from the village. This could potentially lead to significant consequences for them, as the Gandhis, a peaceful community, are tightly knit like a herd. Among them is a shepherd named Bheem, who fiercely protects the group, even at the cost of his own life. Aware of the situation, Bheem has already arrived on the outskirts of Delhi, determined to retrieve his lost sheep. Bheem's strength is so remarkable that he uses himself as bait to lure a wolf into a trap. As he is chased through the forest, he notices the footprint of a tiger and leads his pursuer directly into the feline's claws. When the two animals clash, the wolf decides to flee, and Bheem becomes the target of the tiger. Eventually, he reaches a specific part of the forest where he becomes ensnared in a trap. Despite the tiger's struggles to break free and attack him, Bheem holds onto the ropes, preventing the creature from harming him. However, just as he is about to secure the two hooks, the rope suddenly snaps, freeing the tiger. As the animal lunges at him, Bheem swiftly throws a tranquilizer onto the tiger's snout, causing it to immediately lose consciousness. After hunting with his friends, the shepherd heads to town in search of any clue about Malli's whereabouts. Bheem works in a workshop and one day faces humiliation when an officer accuses him of stealing money. Despite his ability to overpower the officer, Bheem chooses not to retaliate. Robert unleashes a furious attack, striking Bheem repeatedly. Eventually, the soldier departs, and Bheem receives care for his injuries from the family who has given him shelter. When questioned about his lack of self-defense, Bheem explains that he doesn't want to jeopardize his cover or endanger the lives of those who have provided him refuge. Upon receiving a warning about the impending arrival of the pastor, Edward decides to seek the assistance of the British Army to confront this looming threat. However, when questioned about the physical attributes of the intruder, Edward claims to possess no information regarding his appearance. In an effort to motivate her men to eliminate Bheem, Catherine proposes a reward, promising a promotion to the rank of special officer for whoever successfully captures him. Hearing this, Raju recognizes an opportunity to pursue his ambitions and promptly steps forward to undertake the mission of apprehending Bheem. In the afternoon, Bheem witnesses a soldier assaulting one of his fellow villagers and realizes that intervening could compromise his disguise. However, before he can react, an English woman arrives on the scene and instructs the officer to cease his attack on the helpless worker. Jennifer assists the man in getting back on his feet and kindly urges him to go home. Witnessing this act of compassion, Bheem becomes intrigued and develops a keen interest in meeting this young woman. Later on, Raju and his uncle successfully infiltrate a rebel gathering. A traitor among them proposes a plan to eliminate Governor Scott, and one of the attendees falls for the bait. Lachhu, filled with grievances against Scott for a grave injustice done to his village, seeks Raju's assistance in executing the plan. Lachhu assures Raju that he will introduce him to his comrades, but on their way, Raju suddenly realizes that Lachhu is actually an undercover policeman. Reacting swiftly, Raju decides to flee from the situation. Lachhu swiftly navigates through the narrow city streets, skillfully maneuvering through alleys until he reaches a bustling thoroughfare. By blending into the crowd, he manages to successfully evade the pursuing officer. Meanwhile, Bheem hands a coin to a young man, requesting him to procure a fresh fish. Unexpectedly, Lachhu appears and informs Bheem about the grave trouble he has just encountered. In order to ensure Bheem's safety, he urges his friend to return home and hide. Just then, a train passes over the bridge above the river, but a track malfunction causes the vehicle to erupt into flames. Suddenly, an explosion erupts, causing one of the train carriages to be forcefully expelled. The impact sends the young fisherman tumbling into the water, prompting Bheem to swiftly devise a plan to rescue him. Observing Bheem's desperation to help, Raju decides to join forces, and Bheem quickly hops on a motorcycle to reach the bridge with urgency. In the meantime, the pursuing officer mounts a horse and initiates his own rescue mission. Securing themselves to a rope, the two men proceed to hang from the bridge, each taking a separate route. Bheem successfully saves the young fisherman, tossing him to Raju while using a flag to shield his own body from the spreading flames engulfing the area. Once the young fisherman is safely in Raju's care, the duo must collaborate to ensure their own survival. Holding hands, they celebrate the triumphant accomplishment of their mission. Upon their return to the riverbank, they are warmly embraced by the local community, and a deep friendship forms between the unlikely pair. Unaware of the fact that they stand on opposing sides of the conflict, Raju and Lachhu become inseparable friends. In the following days, Raju attempts to locate Lachhu by showing his sketch to people, but regrettably, he fails to gather any relevant information. As time passes, the bond between the two adversaries deepens, and they gradually become integral parts of each other's lives. However, despite their profound friendship, both Bheem and Raju lack the bravery to disclose their true identities. Consequently, Bheem remains oblivious to the fact that Raju is a policeman, while the officer remains unaware that the person he considers his brother is, in reality, his primary target. While riding on Bheem's motorcycle one day, Raju decides to show the portrait of his target, but unfortunately, the paper falls into a puddle, destroying the drawing. At that moment, Raju notices Jennifer and realizes his friend's affection for her. Determined to bring them together, Raju devises a plan. He requests Bheem's assistance and scatters a handful of nails on the road, causing Jennifer's car tires to puncture. When Jennifer seeks help, Raju suggests that Bheem offer her a ride. Together, they visit the market, where Jennifer shares her intention to buy gifts for an Indian girl living in her mansion. Upon hearing this, Bheem experiences immense happiness as he discovers that Malli is alive. Bheem creates a bracelet and asks Jennifer to present it to the girl. Soon after, Madam's chauffeur arrives and invites Jennifer back home. In their farewell, Jennifer extends an invitation to Bheem, inviting him to the evening party at the Gincana Club. Upon arriving home, Jennifer excitedly presents the gifts to Malli, who is overjoyed to see the yellow bracelet, knowing that her savior is present. Meanwhile, Bheem visits his friend and shares the news of his party invitation. They make plans to attend the event together, preparing themselves accordingly. As they reach the club, Jennifer eagerly welcomes her new friend, causing Jake to feel jealous. The couple takes to the dance floor, with Jennifer patiently teaching Bheem how to dance. Bheem quickly learns the steps until he is unexpectedly knocked down by Jake, who proceeds to humiliate him. Witnessing this, Raju intervenes. Together, they perform a lively traditional dance known as the Daisy Notch, infecting the atmosphere with vibrant music. The guests are captivated, and even the ladies abandon their partners to join the joyful choreography, further fueling Jake's anger. This prompts a contest to determine the last dancer standing, with Bheem and Raju emerging as the final competitors. With the intention of helping Bheem impress Jennifer, Raju pretends to have a cramp, allowing Bheem to emerge victorious in the dance-off. As the party concludes, Jennifer invites Bheem to her home for tea, while the officer decides to return to find Lachhu. Recalling that the man's hands were stained with paint when he encountered him, Raju embarks on a quest to locate him within the city's art galleries. With persistent effort and the assistance of his uncle, Raju successfully apprehends the stranger and transports him to an abandoned warehouse. As Bheem approaches Jennifer's residence, he is awestruck by its magnificence. However, his progress is halted by Robert, but Raju intervenes and asserts that Bheem is Jennifer's invited guest. During their conversation over tea, Bheem hears a song sung by Malli and pretends to be hungry, using it as an opportunity to search for the girl. He swiftly navigates the palace corridors until he finds Malli, but realizes that he cannot rescue her alone. Knowing the risk of getting caught, he assures her to remain patient as he must leave for now, promising that she will be back home soon. In that moment, Lachhu endures the interrogation, steadfastly refusing to disclose the whereabouts of his friends. The relentless attacks continue until Raju forcefully seizes Lachhu's necklace and takes a pause. The necklace holds great significance for the officer, as its other half belongs to his fiancée Sita, whom he has been separated from for years. Hours later, Lachhu discovers a venomous snake in the warehouse and manages to catch its attention. With the snake captured, he waits for Raju's return. When the officer approaches, Lachhu hurls the snake at him. In that instant, Raju's life hangs in the balance, as there is no antidote available to neutralize the poison's effects. Aware that he has only 1 hour left to live, the officer chooses to release his prisoner and sets off to bid farewell to his closest friend. That night, Bheem and his companions finalize their plan to infiltrate the castle during the grand celebration of Scott's return. They leave no detail overlooked and set out to carry out their mission. However, as they make their way, Bheem catches the sound of synchronized beats and becomes curious to investigate its source. To his shock, he discovers his friend lying near lifeless, having been stung by a venomous creature. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Bheem swiftly prepares a remedy to extract the poison from his friend's body. Fearing for Raju's life, Bheem removes his sacred cord and places it around his friend's neck, hoping it may offer some protection. In that moment, the policeman recollects that his captive had been wearing the same accessory all along, realizing that the man he had been searching for was right beside him. After completing the required treatment, Bheem escorts Raju to his residence and insists that he rest, assuring him that he will recover fully by the following day. However, prior to departing, Bheem resolves to disclose the truth to his friend, revealing his mission to rescue Malli. Observing his intended subject preparing to depart, Raju attempts to rise and halt him from proceeding with his undertaking, but his feeble condition renders him incapable of even uttering a word. After a considerable duration, as his strength gradually returns, the officer finds it increasingly challenging to suppress his frustration over opposing his dearest friend. Nonetheless, he resolves to proceed with his plan. Simultaneously, Bheem and his fellow villagers launch an assault on the palace, employing the release of numerous untamed creatures as a diversionary tactic to confound the guards. The chaos that ensues, as everyone strives to evade the menacing animals, works in Bheem's favor, as his exceptional agility allows him to fend off the tiger's assault more effectively than most. From within the palace, Malli attempts to attract her shepherd's attention, calling out his name desperately. However, a guard forcibly pushes her inside and seals the door. Witnessing this, Bheem's fury ignites, propelling him to engage in a fierce confrontation with Robert, who not only succumbs effortlessly but also sustains severe injuries. In that moment, Bheem acquires the key and dashes toward the castle, only to be bewildered upon hearing his dear friend's voice. Suddenly assailed, he wonders why Raju is donning a military uniform. The officer endeavors to apprehend him, yet Bheem asserts his innocence and strives to persuade his cherished companion that he is fighting for a noble cause. Nevertheless, Raju remains resolute in his pursuit to capture Bheem. As the supposed friend-turned-foe launches an assault, Bheem loses his grip on the key, provoking an intense fury within him. In a fit of rage, he retaliates ferociously, engaging in a relentless and brutal exchange of blows with Raju. Amidst their fierce clash, Bheem discovers an opening that allows him to ascend the palace in search of Malli. However, as he peers downward, he witnesses his cherished sheep surrounded by a pack of menacing wolves, placing her in grave peril. Overwhelmed by concern, Bheem yearns to rush to her aid but is impeded by Raju, who possesses the opportunity to eliminate his friend with a single decisive strike but chooses to spare him. Seizing this momentary advantage, Bheem manages to overpower his opponent, delivering a piercing blow to Raju's chest. Despite his severe wounds, the determined policeman persists in his efforts to thwart the shepherd's plan, employing the young man's own cord to ensnare him, thereby preventing Bheem from reaching Malli. In the following days, Raju receives a promotion to the position of special officer for successfully apprehending Bheem. This advancement grants him access to the full arsenal of the army, triggering memories of his father's military training. Venkatarama, a former soldier himself, had turned against the British Army due to witnessing horrifying acts of cruelty, where Indian lives were considered of lesser value. In instances of prisoner execution, Scott prohibited the use of ammunition, instead opting for more brutal and agonizing methods to eliminate adversaries. Fed up with witnessing such atrocities, Venkatarama made the decision to return to his village and impart self-defense techniques to his fellow villagers. The challenge lies in the scarcity of firearms and ammunition, leaving the villagers vulnerable as easy targets for the enemy army. During a training session, Venkatarama becomes aware that Raju had utilized a concealed weapon the previous night, leading him to contemplate disciplinary action. However, Sita steps forward and discloses Raju's exceptional skill in target shooting. Intrigued, Venkatarama decides to witness the results for himself and discovers that Raju had executed an incredibly accurate shot from a considerable distance. Overjoyed by this revelation, Venkatarama sees potential in his son and resolves to train him as a professional marksman. Upon their return to the village, they are met with a sudden onslaught from numerous armed guards, resulting in the loss of numerous innocent lives. In an effort to protect his family, Venkatarama confronts the military, but eventually exhausts his ammunition. Witnessing his father in need, Raju steps forward, carrying a chest filled with bullets to replenish his father's supply. In the midst of eliminating some enemy soldiers, Venkatarama sustains a grievous gunshot wound. Unable to continue fighting, he implores Raju to take his place, wielding his father's rifle against the enemy for the first time. Simultaneously, Raju's family members seize the opportunity to escape, yet tragedy befalls them as Chinna is struck by a bullet during their flight. Witnessing her son's injury, Sarojini rushes back to his aid, only to also be shot. In the aftermath of losing his mother and younger brother, Raju finds himself filled with a profound sense of anger and channels it into fighting against the remaining soldiers. Sensing their impending defeat, the military retreats, regrouping to devise a new strategy. Venkatarama firmly believed that firearms were the key to liberating their people from oppression. He envisioned a future where every Indian would possess a gun, driving away the Europeans once and for all, and allowing their nation to thrive independently. Before his demise, Venkatarama implores his son to make a solemn vow to provide each member of their community with a firearm, empowering them to protect themselves. With the soldiers' return, only a solitary bullet remains, prompting Venkatarama to confront them head-on. As he approaches his adversaries, Raju stands ready to take action. In a fateful turn, Raju skillfully aims and fires at his father's body, which is rigged with explosives. Their united effort results in the complete annihilation of the enemy army. To honor his pledge to his father, Raju embarks on a perilous mission to infiltrate the enemy ranks and earn the trust of the British forces. Through occasional letters to his fiancée, he shares updates on his progress, revealing that as a special officer, he now has access to the weapons depot, bringing him closer to fulfilling his goal of arming his village. However, this path is not without inner conflict. Despite fighting for his people's protection, Raju grapples with the guilt of causing harm to those who share the same ideals. Additionally, betraying his best friend weighs heavily on his conscience, making him question the righteousness of his choices. Now, faced with the task of publicly flogging Bheem as a stern warning to all who challenge the crown, Raju finds himself torn. In order to avoid severe punishment, Bheem refuses to kneel down and beg for his master's forgiveness. Raju pleads with him to comply, hoping to spare his friend from harm. However, Bheem is determined to become a symbol of resistance and hope for his people. In a surprising twist, Catherine hands Raju a spiked whip, coercing him to use this brutal weapon against his best friend. Despite delivering multiple blows, Bheem eventually loses consciousness. Nevertheless, his courageous stand and unwavering resistance inspire the people to rise up against oppression. A rebellion ensues, and Bheem is subsequently arrested and taken to jail. In just 2 days, Bheem is scheduled to face a public execution. Determined to save his friend and Malli, Raju decides he is willing to risk his own life. On the day of the event, Bheem is escorted to a transport truck, and Venkatasarulu secretly slips a blade into his hands, providing him with a means to free himself from his restraints. Raju suggests that Malli should witness Bheem's execution, and Commander Scott agrees, recognizing that it will instill fear and terror in his adversary. As they approach the location of the planned execution, Raju puts his plan into motion. He topples a tree onto the commander's vehicle, causing a chaotic accident. Although Commander Scott escapes unharmed, he begins shooting at Raju, who retaliates by overturning the car. In the process, Raju is impaled by a tree branch, while Malli is thrown to a distance. Malli manages to escape through the forest, and Raju pursues her, determined to prevent the soldiers from capturing her. Meanwhile, Bheem seizes the opportunity to free himself by cutting the rope binding his wrists and engages in a fierce fight against the guards. Despite his own injuries, Raju fights off the soldiers and ensures Malli's safety. However, when Raju takes out his gun to shoot at one of the soldiers, Bheem mistakenly believes that Malli is the target and attacks Raju. Raju is left wounded on the ground as Malli and Bheem make their escape, with Bheem fighting off the pursuing soldiers. Once they are at a safe distance, Bheem surrenders himself and is subsequently captured by the military. Despite being subjected to harsh conditions, Bheem remains defiant and continues to work on improving his physical and mental strength, preparing for the day when he can escape. Enraged, Commander Scott orders the guards to relentlessly attack Bheem and eventually places him in solitary confinement, where there is barely enough space for him to stand. Meanwhile, in the city, the military conducts house-to-house searches in search of the fugitives. When they reach the shelter where Bheem, Malli, and Sita are hiding, Sita notices their desperation and decides to intervene. She informs the soldiers that there are individuals showing symptoms of tuberculosis in that location, prompting the soldiers to leave and giving the fugitives a moment of respite. Sita joins them for dinner, and during their conversation, Bheem notices a necklace worn by Sita that bears a striking resemblance to the pendant Raju possesses. This triggers a realization for Bheem, and he inquires why Sita is present. She reveals that she received a letter informing her that her fiancé, Raju, is slated to be executed for betraying the crown, and she has come to retrieve his body. Upon learning the truth about Raju's plans and his unjust arrest, Bheem is consumed by guilt for abandoning his friend. Determined to rectify his mistake, Bheem decides to rescue Raju and reunite him with his bride. Under the cover of darkness, Bheem sneaks into the prison, carefully navigating the corridors to locate Raju's cell. With his sheer strength, Bheem tears off the cell railing and lifts Raju onto his shoulders, knowing that his friend is severely injured and unable to run. The guards soon become aware of their escape and give chase, but the duo skillfully evades them. Raju, using his own rifles, fights back against the pursuing guards. In a daring bid for freedom, the two friends climb a tower, incapacitate the guard, and leap over the wall, disappearing into the safety of the surrounding forest. While quenching his thirst at a lake, Bheem finds himself surrounded by the enemy army, and it appears that his fate is sealed. However, just in the nick of time, Raju emerges from the shadows, armed with a bow and arrows he discovered in the forest. With precision and skill, Raju eliminates the soldiers one by one, setting the surroundings ablaze and ensuring that no survivor is left behind. As new enemies arrive on the scene, Bheem utilizes a spear to destroy their vehicles and thwart their advances. Simultaneously, Raju employs grenades to deter the approaching military forces. As their resources become depleted, the two comrades resort to hand-to-hand combat, engaging their enemies with sheer determination. Tragically, Raju falls victim to a gunshot inflicted by Edward. In a valiant effort to protect his friend, Bheem hurls a motorcycle at the deranged assailant, impaling him with a spear through his abdomen. Following their success in eliminating the soldiers, Bheem and Raju set their sights on the commander, launching a flaming motorcycle towards his castle. The motorcycle collides with numerous boxes of explosives, triggering a colossal explosion that obliterates everything within the palace's walls. Witnessing the lifeless body of his beloved wife, Scott succumbs to anger and resolves to confront his adversaries single-handedly. Yet, before he can even discharge a single bullet, Bheem swiftly delivers a fatal shot to Scott's chest. After vanquishing all of the British Crown's allies, Bheem and Raju rejoice in the long-awaited reunion with their families. Raju, in particular, finds immense joy in being reunited with his fiancée after enduring years of separation. Together, they embark on a triumphant journey back to their village, carrying with them a cache of weapons. Finally, Raju fulfills the vow he made to his father during his childhood. Meanwhile, Bheem successfully accomplishes his mission, safely returning Malli to her home, much to the surprise and delight of her mother, who managed to survive the attack. So, that's it. Be sure to comment with your thoughts below. If the video feels good, then like this video. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified of our latest videos. Thank you for watching this video and have a nice day.